The massive Imperial vessels darkened Earth's skies as they entered orbit. 50 giant ships, each longer than 3 kilometers, moved into position around the blue planet. Their metal hulls reflected sunlight like polished mirrors. Strange symbols decorated their sides, marks of power from a civilization that ruled thousands of worlds. Admiral Da stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Emperor's Fist. He was tall with gray skin and 4 arms. His uniform sparkled with medals and badges of honor. Through the large viewing window, he looked down at Earth with cold eyes. "Such a small world," he said to his second-in-command, Officer Ta. "Look at their cities. So primitive. They still burn fossil fuels." Officer Ta nodded. "Our scans show they only reached space travel 80 years ago. They have colonies on their moon and Mars, but nothing beyond their system." Admiral Da smiled, showing sharp teeth. "The Emperor will be pleased. Another easy conquest." Earth had detected the Imperial fleet 3 weeks earlier. Leaders from all nations had gathered in emergency meetings. They knew this day would come. For years, their deep space telescopes had watched the Empire grow, swallowing nearby star systems one by one. Ambassador Kim stood in her office at United Earth headquarters in Geneva. She adjusted her simple blue uniform and touched the small communication device in her ear. "Are the ships ready?" she asked. General Huan's voice came through clearly. "Yes. Our welcoming fleet will launch in 10 minutes. Remember, show no fear." "I never do," she replied. 20 small Earth ships rose from the Atlantic Ocean base. Their hulls were white with the blue Earth flag painted on the sides. Each carried 5 crew members and moved in perfect formation toward the waiting Imperial vessels. From his command ship, Admiral Da watched the approaching Earth vessels. "They send toys to greet us," he laughed. His officers joined in. "Prepare the landing shuttle. I will meet these humans face to face." The Imperial shuttle was black and shaped like an arrow. It descended through Earth's atmosphere, escorted by fighter ships on each side. It landed at the Geneva International Spaceport, where a red carpet waited. Ambassador Kim stood at the end of the carpet with 10 other human representatives. They wore matching blue uniforms with gold pins showing Earth's continents. None showed any sign of fear as the shuttle door opened with a hiss of air. Admiral Da stepped out first. In person, he stood nearly 3 meters tall. Behind him came 12 Imperial officers of different species. Some had multiple eyes or arms. Others moved on tentacles instead of legs. All wore the same black uniforms with red symbols of rank. Ambassador Kim stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Welcome to Earth, Admiral Da. I am Ambassador Kim, speaking for all humans. We welcome peaceful relations with the Galactic Empire." Admiral Da looked down at her. His upper arms were crossed while his lower arms rested on weapons at his belt. "Your world is now on the border of Imperial space," he said in a deep voice. Translation devices allowed everyone to understand. "The Emperor has sent me to bring you into our civilization. We are honored by your visit," Ambassador Kim said. "Please, follow me to our meeting hall where we can discuss terms." The meeting hall was a large round room with a glass ceiling showing the sky above. The Imperial delegation sat on one side of a circular table. The Earth representatives sat opposite them. Screens on the walls showed the faces of world leaders watching from different countries. Admiral Da spoke first. "The Empire spans 10,000 star systems. We bring order and technology to primitive worlds like yours. In return, you will provide resources and soldiers." Ambassador Kim nodded politely. "We understand the Empire is powerful. Earth would like to establish trade and cultural exchange first. We have much to learn from each other." This made Admiral Da laugh. His mandibles clicked together rapidly. "Cultural exchange. Your species has barely left its cradle. Your ships are toys compared to our might." He touched a button on his wrist. A hologram appeared above the table showing the Imperial fleet in orbit. Then it showed thousands more ships throughout nearby star systems. "This is a small fraction of our power," he said. "The Emperor does not request friendship. He offers protection. One of the Earth representatives, Dr. Park, leaned forward. What does Earth gain from this arrangement? Admiral Day's eyes narrowed. You gain survival. The Earth delegation remained silent. They exchanged no worried glances. Their heartbeats stayed steady. Their faces showed no sweat. This strange calmness confused Admiral Day. In his experience, primitive worlds always showed fear when shown Imperial might. Perhaps you don't understand your situation, Admiral Day said, standing up to his full height. We can destroy your cities from orbit. We can take your resources by force. Ambassador Kim simply nodded. We understand perfectly, Admiral. But surely violence isn't necessary. Earth wishes to join the galactic community peacefully. This calm response angered Admiral Da. He slammed one hand on the table. Enough games. You have 1 month to pledge allegiance to the Empire, he announced, voice echoing in the hall. Prepare your world leaders to sign surrender documents. Prepare your people to serve new masters, or face extinction. He turned and stormed out with his delegation following behind. The Earth representatives remained seated, watching them leave. When the Imperial shuttle lifted off, Ambassador Kim touched her communication device. They've gone, she said. General Wan's voice came through. How did it go? They reacted exactly as expected, General Wan. Arrogant, threatening, completely underestimating us. Perfect, General Wan replied. Did they notice anything unusual? Ambassador Kim smiled slightly. No, they were too busy showing off their power to notice ours. Then we proceed as planned. Initiate Protocol Nemesis. Understood, Ambassador Kim said, looking up at the sky where Imperial ships still circled. They think they found an easy conquest. Instead, they found their match. Imperial scanners watched Earth day and night. From their ships in orbit, the aliens observed humans working at a frantic pace. Shipyards in space around Earth glowed with welding lights as workers built new vessels. Every day, more ships launched from Earth. They were small compared to Imperial vessels, but their numbers grew quickly. Admiral Dai stood on the bridge of his flagship watching Earth on the large screen. His 4 arms were folded across his chest. The human ships looked like insects next to his massive warships. 21 days until their surrender deadline, said Officer Tai, checking his data tablet. They have built 37 new combat vessels since our arrival. Admiral Dai made a clicking sound with his mandibles. This was how his species laughed. Pathetic, he said to the 12 officers gathered around him. They build toys to fight our army. Do they think quantity will overcome quality? The officers laughed with him. One asked, should we destroy their shipyards now, Admiral? End this foolishness. Admiral Dad waved the suggestion away. No, let them exhaust their resources. Let them think they have a chance. It will make their surrender more complete. Every day, Earth sent messages asking for peace talks. Admiral Dai ignored them all. The Empire did not negotiate with primitive worlds. They either joined or were destroyed. Lieutenant June stood quietly at the back of the room. She was smaller than the other officers, with pale blue skin and large eyes designed for seeing details. As the ship's intelligence officer, her job was to notice things others missed. She waited until the other officers left before approaching Admiral Da. In her hands, she held a special tablet showing unusual readings. Admiral, she said softly, keeping her eyes lowered as was proper, may I speak with you about a concern? Admiral Da sighed. What is it, Lieutenant? More human messages begging for mercy. No, sir. We've detected unusual activity in Earth's asteroid belt. She showed him the tablet with moving dots representing energy signatures. These patterns began 3 days ago and have been increasing. Admiral Dag glanced at the data without much interest. Mining operations, no doubt. These humans scramble for resources in desperation. They probably seek materials for their little ships. But, sir, Lieutenant June continued carefully, the energy readings are unusual. They don't match typical mining equipment, and the pattern seems deliberate, almost like. Like what, Lieutenant? Admiral Day's voice grew sharp. Do you suggest these primitives have technology we don't understand? Remember, they only achieved space travel in the last century. Lieutenant June lowered her head further. No, Admiral. You're right, of course. I'll continue monitoring. Do that. Admiral Day turned back to the main screen. And prepare a battle group. It's time we demonstrated our power more directly. The next day, Admiral Day dispatched only 1/4 of his fleet toward Mars. 15 massive warships moved into position around the red planet where humans had built colonies. This was meant as a show of force, not a full attack. The message was clear. If this small portion of his fleet could threaten Mars, imagine what the full armada could do to Earth. From Earth, 40 small warships launched to protect Mars. They were new vessels, clearly built in the past few weeks. Their hulls still shone with fresh paint. On each side was Earth's blue and green flag. Admiral Day watched from his command ship as the human fleet approached Mars. Look how they hurry to defend their little colony, he said. Let's give them a demonstration. Target their lead ships with low-power weapons. Damage but don't destroy them. 5 Imperial warships fired energy beams at the approaching Earth vessels. The humans responded immediately, breaking formation and returning fire. Their ships moved with surprising speed and coordination. They've practiced, Lieutenant June observed quietly. The skirmish lasted 20 minutes. 3 human ships were destroyed, breaking apart in space, but they managed to damage 2 Imperial vessels before retreating. The bridge fell silent. Imperial ships were rarely damaged in battles with primitive worlds. They fight better than expected, Lieutenant Jun said, reviewing the battle data. Their weapons pierced our outer shields. Admiral Day frowned. This was unexpected but not concerning. But not well enough, he replied. They lost 3 ships while barely scratching 2 of ours. Their weapons are stronger than we anticipated, but still no match for Imperial technology. He turned to his communications officer. Send word to Earth. Tell them this was merely a demonstration. If they surrender now, we will be merciful. The officer nodded and sent the message. Minutes later, Earth responded with a single word. No. This made Admiral Day angry. He ordered his ships to return to Earth orbit. They need a stronger lesson, he told his officers. Prepare to target military installations on their moon. Unknown to Admiral Day, deep within Earth's lunar base, something important was happening. 200 meters below the surface in a chamber protected by layers of special materials that blocked Imperial scans, Commander Su stood before a large control panel. The room was filled with 50 engineers and scientists. All wore the same gray uniforms with a single patch showing a black shield. This was Project Nemesis, Earth's most secret program. Status report, Commander Su said. She was small but had a strong voice that carried authority. All 7 units are responding, said Chief Engineer Park. The asteroid belt units are at 93%. The lunar unit is at 97%. Commander Su nodded and placed her hand on a scanner. The screen lit up with her fingerprints and eye pattern. General Huan has given the order, she said. The Empire has shown their hand with the Mars attack. They're predictable, just as we hoped. Begin final sequence activation. The room hummed with energy as computers processed her command. On the main screen, 7 dots turned from yellow to green one by one. Final sequence initiated, announced the computer in a calm voice. Project Nemesis Awakening. Estimated completion, 18 hours. Commander Su looked at the tired faces around her. They had worked for this moment for 10 years, ever since Earth's long-range telescopes first spotted the Empire expanding toward their solar system. Send word to all Earth forces, she said. Maintain defensive positions only. No attacks. Buy us these 18 hours at any cost. As her message went out, Imperial ships were already moving toward the moon, weapons charging. Above them, The stars shone peacefully, unaware of the conflict below. And in the distant asteroid belt, something powerful stirred to life after years of waiting. Imperial warships moved into position around Earth's moon. 10 massive ships, their weapons glowing hot, targeted the human colonies built on the gray surface. These domes and tunnels were home to 30,000 people who had lived peacefully on the moon for decades. Begin the bombardment. Admiral Da ordered from his command ship. Target their power stations and life support systems first. Red beams of energy shot from the Imperial ships, striking the lunar surface. Explosions bloomed in silence. Dome shields flickered and failed under the assault. Emergency alarms flashed across Earth's monitoring stations as the attack continued. Admiral Da watched with satisfaction on his main screen. His 4 arms were clasped behind his back as he paced the command bridge. "This is merely a demonstration," he told his officers. "A final warning before we target Earth itself. The humans must learn that resistance is pointless." The bombardment continued for 20 minutes. 3 lunar domes were breached, forcing residents to evacuate into emergency shelters. Communication towers toppled. Solar arrays melted under the intense heat of Imperial weapons. From Earth, desperate messages poured in, begging for mercy. Admiral Da ignored them all. The Emperor had given clear orders: bring these humans into the Empire or destroy them. Their continued defiance meant destruction was the only option. "Sir," said Officer Tay, "Earth's defensive fleet is not responding. They remain in orbit around their planet." Admiral Da nodded. They'd finally learned their lesson. They know they cannot stop us. Lieutenant June stood at her sensor station, monitoring the battle. Her large eyes narrowed as unusual readings appeared on her screen. Something was happening in the distance, far beyond the moon. "Admiral," she called, but her voice was lost amid the officer's congratulations. She checked her readings again, making sure it wasn't an error. The signals were clear now. Something very large was moving in the asteroid belt, heading toward them fast. "Admiral." She tried again, louder this time. Admiral Da turned with annoyance. "What is it, Lieutenant?" Before she could answer, the sensor officer at the main console jumped from his seat. His voice cracked with alarm as he shouted, "Sir, something massive is emerging from the asteroid belt." All eyes turned to the main screen as the computer shifted view from the moon to the space beyond Mars. The darkness between planets seemed to part, like a curtain being pulled aside. Stars vanished as something moved in front of them. A colossal vessel appeared, emerging from shadow. It was sleek and black, shaped like an arrowhead, but with smooth edges that curved elegantly. Its surface absorbed light rather than reflecting it, creating an outline that seemed darker than the space around it. The ship was at least 5 kilometers long, larger even than Admiral Da's flagship. "What is that?" Admiral Da whispered, his confidence faltering for the first time. The massive ship had no visible engines, no glowing propulsion systems like all known vessels. Yet it accelerated toward the Imperial fleet with impossible speed, covering the distance from the asteroid belt to lunar orbit in minutes rather than hours. "Scan it," ordered Admiral Da. "Where did it come from? How did we not detect it?" Officer Todd worked frantically at his console. "Scans cannot penetrate its hull, Admiral. It's absorbing our sensor beams just like it absorbs light." Lieutenant June's voice was quiet but clear. "It's been hiding, Admiral. Those energy readings in the asteroid belt. This is what they were building." As the black ship approached, all Imperial weapons turned away from the moon to target this new threat. The bridge was silent except for the beeping of alert systems. For the first time since arriving at Earth, fear crept into the Imperial officers' hearts. A transmission cut through all communication channels. It bypassed Imperial encryption as if it didn't exist. On every screen, in every helmet communicator, the same calm voice spoke. "This is Captain Jin of the Earth defense ship Nemesis, responding to lunar distress call." The voice was female, steady, and confident. "Imperial forces, withdraw immediately from Earth's moon. This is your only warning." Admiral Day's mandibles clicked rapidly, not in laughter this time, but in nervous agitation. This couldn't be happening. Humans were primitive. They couldn't have built such a ship in secret. Finding his courage, Admiral Day opened a channel. "This is Admiral Day of the Galactic Imperial Fleet. Your single ship, impressive as it may be, cannot stand against our armada. Surrender now, and your world may yet be spared." There was no response from the Nemesis. Instead, the black ship continued its approach, now just 50,000 kilometers away and closing fast. "Fire all weapons," Admiral Day ordered. "Destroy it." 20 Imperial ships fired simultaneously. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and gravity weapons all targeted the approaching Nemesis. The space between them lit up with enough firepower to shatter a small moon. But when the energy faded, the Nemesis continued forward, completely untouched. "Impossible," whispered Officer Ta. "It absorbed our attacks." Admiral Day's confidence shattered. "Raise all shields. Prepare for impact." The Nemesis accelerated again, moving with a grace that defied physics. It approached Admiral Day's flagship, the most powerful ship in his fleet. The Imperial vessel's shields glowed blue as they powered to maximum strength, shields that could withstand asteroids and orbital bombardments. The black ship passed through these shields, as though they didn't exist. Day's laughter from earlier was replaced with shock as the Nemesis glided alongside his ship. This close, they could see details of its hull. No rivets, no seams, just smooth black material that seemed to flow rather than be constructed. The Nemesis continued past Day's flagship toward the largest Imperial dreadnought. From its bow, a thin beam of blue light emerged. This beam, no wider than a person, touched the dreadnought's hull. In perfect silence, the beam sliced through the mighty Imperial vessel like a knife through paper. The dreadnought was cut in half, from bow to stern, in seconds. No explosion followed. Instead, the two halves simply drifted apart, systems failing, emergency pods launching from both sections. "What technology is this?" gasped Lieutenant June. "No known weapon can do that." On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Day watched in horror. His mighty fleet, the pride of the Empire, faced something beyond their understanding. In 3 weeks of observing Earth, they had seen nothing to suggest such advanced technology existed. "Full retreat," Day ordered, his voice shaking. "All ships, emergency withdrawal. Return to Imperial space immediately." The Imperial ships turned away from the moon, engines glowing hot as they accelerated. None fired upon the Nemesis again. None challenged its presence. Their only thought was escape from this unexpected nightmare. As the Imperial fleet fled, the Nemesis did something even more surprising. It did not pursue. Instead, it positioned itself protectively between the damaged lunar colonies and the retreating Imperial ships. From its lower hull, small crafts emerged carrying medical personnel and repair teams to help the injured colonists. Admiral Day watched this on his sensors as his ship raced away from Earth. The humans had tricked them. They had hidden their true capabilities, letting the Empire believe they were weak. And now, given the chance to destroy Day's fleet, this Nemesis ship chose mercy instead. "Lieutenant," Day called to June, his voice quiet now. "Begin analysis of everything we've seen. I must report to the Emperor immediately." As his ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, leaving Earth's solar system behind, Admiral Day felt something he hadn't experienced in his long military career: doubt. The Empire had always been the strongest force in the galaxy, but today they had met something they did not understand. Something that made Admiral Day wonder if the Empire's days of easy conquest might be ending. The Emperor's palace stretched across an entire moon. Golden towers reached toward the stars. Inside the Grand Hall, 50 Imperial generals and admirals gathered around a large round table. In the center, a hologram of the Emperor appeared, 3 times larger than life. The Emperor had ruled for 300 years. His skin was dark purple with golden markings of royalty. Four eyes glowed red with anger as he looked down at the kneeling form of Admiral Da. "You fled." The Emperor's voice boomed through the hall. "You ran from primitive humans." Admiral Da kept his head bowed. His once proud uniform was now plain, his medals removed as punishment for his retreat. "My Emperor," he said carefully, "I lost 5 ships in minutes. Their vessel called Nemesis has technology we've never seen before. It passed through our strongest shields like they weren't there." The Emperor slammed his fist on his throne. The hologram flickered. "One ship. They have one unusual ship, and you abandoned our conquest." Lieutenant June stood behind Admiral Da. She had brought sensor readings and video evidence of the encounter. She stepped forward when the Emperor motioned to her. "Your Greatness," she said, activating her data tablet. "Our scans show the Nemesis vessel has no conventional power source. It seems to bend space around itself. Our weapons had no effect." The hologram showed the Nemesis cutting an Imperial dreadnought in half. The Emperor watched in silence, his 4 eyes narrowing. "This changes nothing," he said finally. "Earth must be conquered. The Empire cannot show weakness. If word spreads that primitives defeated us, other worlds might rebel." He turned to his Supreme General, a tall being with gray skin and black armor. "Prepare the Grand Armada. All available ships. We will crush this Earth and take their technology for ourselves." "Yes, Emperor," the Supreme General bowed. Admiral Day rose to his feet. "My Emperor, please reconsider. Their technology is unlike anything we've encountered. The Nemesis vessel is one ship," the Emperor roared, his hologram growing larger with his anger. "One ship against the might of our Grand Armada. 2,000 warships will turn their world to ash." The decision was made. No one dared argue further. Admiral Da was ordered to join the attack fleet, not as a commander but as an advisor. His knowledge of Earth's defenses might prove useful. 3 days later, the Grand Armada gathered at the edge of Earth's solar system. 2,000 warships of all sizes formed a sphere 50,000 kilometers wide. At its center was the Emperor's personal vessel, a massive ship 20 kilometers long with weapons that could crack planets. Admiral Da stood on the bridge of the Supreme General's ship. He felt sick with worry. The Empire had never deployed such force against a single world. Earth would be reduced to floating rocks. "Begin the advance," ordered the Supreme General. "All ships maintain attack formation. Target their moon first, then their planet." The Grand Armada moved forward, passing the outer planets of the solar system. Neptune and Uranus were left behind. Next came Saturn with its beautiful rings. Ships maintained perfect formation, a wall of destruction heading toward Earth. As they approached Jupiter, the largest planet in the system, sensors detected movement. The Supreme General ordered the fleet to slow. Something was happening in the swirling clouds of the gas giant. "Multiple objects emerging from Jupiter's atmosphere," reported the sensor officer. 6 large vessels, similar configuration to the Nemesis. Admiral Da felt his heart stop. "They have more than one." On the main screen, 6 black ships rose from Jupiter's storms. Like the Nemesis, they were sleek and dark, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They formed a line between the Grand Armada and the path to Earth. "It was a trap," whispered Admiral Da. "They let us see one ship. They wanted us to return with our full fleet." The Supreme General was not impressed. 6 ships or 60, they cannot stand against 2,000. All vessels, open fire. The space around Jupiter lit up as thousands of energy weapons fired simultaneously. The combined firepower could have destroyed a small moon. The black ships made no attempt to evade. They simply held position as the barrage approached. When the energy faded, all 6 ships remained untouched. "Impossible," shouted the Supreme General. A science officer approached, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Sir, our readings suggest they're using dark matter manipulation. They're bending space itself around their vessels. Our energy weapons are being absorbed or redirected. Dark matter technology." The Supreme General turned to Admiral Da. No species has mastered this. It's theoretical only. The humans have done it. Admiral Day replied simply. Before more could be said, the 6 black ships began to move. Like their sister ship Nemesis, they moved with impossible grace, accelerating instantly without visible propulsion. They spread out, each targeting a different section of the Imperial fleet. All ships, evasive maneuvers, ordered the Supreme General. Concentrate fire on the nearest target. But the black ships were too fast. They passed through Imperial vessels as if solid matter meant nothing to them. Where they touched, ships lost power. Some were cut in two by thin blue beams. Others simply went dark, all systems failing at once. The battle near Jupiter lasted only 3 hours. In that time, 400 Imperial ships were disabled or destroyed. Not a single black ship showed any damage. They moved methodically through the fleet, targeting weapons systems and engines, but notably avoiding crew quarters when possible. Admiral Dai watched from the command bridge as escape pods launched from damaged Imperial vessels. The black ships made no attempt to fire upon these pods. In fact, some pods that tumbled out of control were gently pushed back on course by the black ships. They could annihilate us all, Admiral Day realized aloud. But they're showing restraint. They're disabling our ships, not destroying them when they have the choice. The Supreme General's face was pale with shock. Why? Why show mercy when they have the advantage? Before anyone could answer, a 7th black ship appeared. The original Nemesis joined its sisters near Jupiter. Together, the 7 vessels surrounded the Emperor's massive ship, which had remained at the rear of the fleet. Everyone expected the Emperor's ship to be cut apart like the others. Instead, the black ships simply formed a circle around it, weapons ready but not firing. A transmission came through on all Imperial frequencies. On screens throughout the fleet, a human face appeared. It was General Huan, an older man with calm eyes and gray hair. "Imperial forces," he said in a steady voice. "This conflict is unnecessary. We have no desire to destroy your ships or take your worlds. Earth wishes only to exist peacefully." The Emperor himself responded, his voice filled with rage. "You dare attack the Grand Armada and then speak of peace?" General Huan nodded. "We defended ourselves with minimum force. Look at your ships. We disabled weapons but spared crews when possible. We could have destroyed your entire fleet, but chose not to." This truth hung in the air. Of the 400 Imperial ships disabled, most crews had survived. The humans had the power to annihilate, but had chosen restraint. "We offer peace," said General Huan, his face serious but not threatening. "The choice is yours, Emperor. Continue this fight which you cannot win, or join us in building something better." The Supreme General looked to Admiral Day, who had witnessed the Nemesis firsthand. "Can we defeat these ships?" he asked quietly. Admiral Dai shook his head. "Not with any technology we possess. They control forces we barely understand." On the main screen, General Huan waited patiently for the Emperor's answer. Around the Emperor's ship, 7 black destroyers held position, a silent demonstration of Earth's power and, more importantly, Earth's mercy. Europa shone like a pearl against the darkness of space. The small moon of Jupiter had no buildings or cities, just ice and hidden oceans. Now it served as neutral ground where 2 powers could meet face to face. A large dome had been built on the surface, half Imperial design and half Earth design. Inside, a round table made of dark wood from Earth sat in the center of a heated room. Large windows showed the stars outside. Above the dome, 7 black ships hung in the sky like silent guardians. The destroyers stayed in formation, a reminder of Earth's unexpected power. The Emperor arrived with 20 guards and 3 advisors. He wore golden armor that caught the light as he moved. His 4 eyes scanned the room, looking for traps. Finding none, he took his place at the table. General Huan entered with 5 humans. Ambassador Kim and Commander Su walked beside him. 2 scientists followed with cases of data tablets. No weapons were visible on any human, though the Imperial guards carried energy spears that hummed with power. "Welcome to our first official peace talks," said General Juan, bowing slightly to the Emperor. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." The Emperor did not bow back. His voice was deep and cold. "Your demonstration of power was convincing, but do not mistake this meeting for surrender. The Empire has ruled for 10,000 years. General Juan nodded. "We have no wish to rule the Empire or challenge your authority over your worlds. Earth only wants peace." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Then explain your weapons. Why does a peaceful world build 7 planet killers?" The room grew quiet. General Juan looked to Commander Su, who stepped forward and placed a small device on the table. It projected a hologram between them. "We never wanted war," General Juan said, his face serious. "The destroyers weren't built to fight your empire or any other civilization. Then why create such weapons?" the Emperor demanded, leaning forward. His guards tensed, hands on their weapons. Commander Su touched the device. The hologram changed to show something massive moving through deep space. It looked like a cloud at first, but closer inspection revealed a structure within, something vast and alive. Stars disappeared where it passed. "We call it the Devourer," General Juan said quietly. "Our long-range telescopes discovered it 20 years ago. It has consumed 3 galaxies before ours. The destroyers were designed to combat it, not you." The Emperor stared at the hologram. For once, he seemed at a loss for words. His science advisor moved closer, examining the data. "This is real?" the advisor asked. Commander Su nodded. "We detected its approach 15 years ago. Our scientists calculated it will reach the outer edge of our galaxy within 30 years. 5 years after that, it will reach Imperial space. 10 years after that, Earth." Admiral Dai had been standing quietly behind the Emperor. Now he stepped forward, studying the data with growing horror. The measurements, the movement patterns, the energy readings, all confirmed what the humans were saying. "Your species developed this technology in isolation?" Admiral Dai asked, amazed. "Dark matter manipulation, phase shifting, gravity control." "Necessity," replied Commander Su simply. "We had no choice. Our world was too young to evacuate to another galaxy. We had to find a way to fight." The Emperor's advisor whispered in his ear, showing data from their own devices. The advisor looked pale and afraid. "Our long-range scans have detected anomalies," the advisor admitted. "We thought they were natural phenomena, but this data matches what we've observed." General Juan spoke again, his voice steady. "We offer partnership instead of conflict. Earth has the technology. The Empire has resources and reach across thousands of worlds. Together, we might survive what comes." The room fell silent as the Emperor considered this information. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as he processed the threat facing not just his empire, but all life in the galaxy. "You could have destroyed us," the Emperor said finally. "When our fleet attacked, you could have eliminated our ships, killed me, taken our worlds one by one with your destroyers." "That was never our intention," General Juan replied. "Earth seeks allies, not subjects. We need each other now, more than ever." The Emperor stood suddenly. His guards raised their weapons, but he motioned for them to stand down. "Show me these destroyers," he commanded. "I wish to see this technology for myself." 2 hours later, the Emperor stood inside the Nemesis, the first of the destroyer vessels. Captain Jin guided him through corridors of smooth black material that seemed to absorb sound as well as light. The ship hummed with energy that could be felt rather than heard. "The core uses dark matter manipulation," Captain Jin explained as they entered a large chamber. In the center floated a sphere of what looked like liquid darkness. "It doesn't power the ship so much as change the rules of physics around us." The Emperor watched the core pulse with energy. "And this can harm the Devourer." "We believe so," said Captain Jin. "But 7 ships aren't enough. We need more. Many more." The Emperor nodded slowly. Then we shall build more. Together. 1 month later, Admiral Dai stood beside General Huan in a new facility built in orbit around Jupiter. Below them, hundreds of engineers from Earth and the Empire worked together on platforms surrounding the frame of the 8th destroyer. Imperial technology and human innovation combined as the black hull took shape. I never imagined our first contact with your empire would end like this, General Huan said, watching the workers below. Admiral Dai's mandibles clicked softly. The Empire has conquered for so long. We forgot there are other ways to grow. Perhaps we needed this reminder. On a large screen above the construction bay, data flowed showing the Devourer's path through space. It was still years away, but moving steadily toward their galaxy. Will it be enough? Admiral Dai asked, gesturing to the half-built destroyer below them. Even with our combined strength. General Huan shrugged. I don't know. But fighting alone, we would certainly fail. Together, we have a chance. Through the viewport beside them, stars twinkled peacefully against the black of space. They looked calm and unchanging, giving no sign of the darkness approaching from beyond the galaxy's edge. The Emperor has ordered 1,000 destroyers to be built, Admiral Dai said. He's never committed such resources to anything before. Earth will provide the technology and training, General Huan replied. And when the time comes, we'll face this threat not as Earth and Empire, but as one force. Below them, human and Imperial engineers worked side by side, their past conflict forgotten as they built something new. Not just a weapon, but a future where ancient enemies might become the galaxy's last hope. The end.